Hey guys, it's Troy with DIY Home and Auto. Today's video on the 79 Ford is all about the rear brakes. We've got to get the rear brakes dialed in. I'm replacing all the components in the drum brake system, from the drum itself to all the springs and everything down inside. And people ask me all the time how I learn, like, how do I do this? How do I learn these things? And I'm going to give you a little secret. I wasn't going to video anything until I had it all figured out. So I'm giving you a sneak preview of kind of the behind the scenes, what I do. When I have two components to do, I completely disassemble and figure it all out on one side before I ever touch the other side, and I video the other side so that I know what I'm talking about and I'm able to provide good information. So I've got this side all torn apart. I'm going to show you how to tear the other side apart, but this gives you a preview of kind of how I operate. But let's take a look at the components that are going back into this one, and then we'll start tearing that one apart as we get this one rebuilt. Let's look at it. So one of the other things that I do is I take pictures with my iPad so that I have big, high quality images, close up, multiple angles, so I can see exactly where all the springs are, all the things, right? And then I disassemble it on my workbench so that I can see what I've got. And I'm going to duplicate this with my new parts right here, and then put it all back together and get it on the truck. And 20 minutes later, we have it duplicated, all shiny new. Let's get this thing on the truck. Alright, so what we're doing is we're removing the bolts that hold in the, I don't know what that thing's called, the hydraulic piece that actually works the brakes. What's the thing called? The drum barrel, I don't know. So there's two bolts that hold that in place, and then there's one bolt that holds the pin that holds the whole assembly together on the inside. And we'll be able to take this all the way apart and leave the drum assembly together so that we can use that as comparison for putting the old one back together. We also took lots of pictures of this before we took it off the truck. There you go. Get after it. And that top pin that holds the whole thing in the thing is what you're hitting on right now. We're just pressing it out so that it's loose. Looks like it actually is loose. And that pin is this guy right here. That's what we're trying to loosen to get out of there. There it goes. A claw hammer would probably be best for that. There's a spring underneath this thing. There we go. So you want to be careful so that it doesn't just come completely apart on you. But you have to save these components. The spring, the washer, and the pin. You have to reuse those when you put it back together. And the bolts that hold the hydraulic barrel in as well, whatever that thing's called. Okay, so now we should be able to release these springs to get this out. And the way I found to do it is you use a flathead screwdriver and just push down on the spring and release the thing that's holding it in. Carefully, because you don't want it to release and get your fingers. But that should be all that's holding it into we gotta hold it. Let's put that back together for a second. We gotta get this thing loose from in there. There it goes. Okay, carefully, so it doesn't fall apart. Just set it right here to the side. Okay, so this is our example that we're building off of when we rebuild this, but we're going to clean this all up and paint it like we did the other side so it's all pretty. Alright, so again we have the old disc brake components pulled out, and we're ready to start assembling the new. I do have to recycle some parts from this, so I've got to pull it apart a little bit and get these out. We're saving the plungers. I'm not sure what those are called. I call them plungers. We're going to reuse those. So I'm going to clean those up, wire brush, add a little of penetrating lubricant to them just so that they stay rust free. And then we'll put them with our new, I wish I knew what these things were called. I keep calling them barrel something. They look like barrels to me. But anyway, that's the thing that actually applies the pressure, makes the brakes do what they do. So we're going to get all these things attached and build this thing. Aim penetrating lubricant. Just add a little bit to it and rub it around just so that it gets coated in it, and then wipe off the excess, and that should protect them for a long time. And remember the bolts we saved from when we took it apart. These are the ones that hold the brake caliper, barrel, compressor thingy in. Same thing, just hit this with a wire brush. Add a little penetrating lubricant to it to rub around. Keeps it from rusting. Then we'll have to stand this thing up and put these in from the back side. And then you grab your shoes. And you look at how your original one is laid out. Looks like, so this pin that's in there goes with the emergency brake mechanism, or the auto adjust mechanism I should say. So just look for that pin, it'll tell you which side the things go on. And again, it helps that I've already done this once on the other side, so I'm able to really visualize what's supposed to be taking place here. And I'll tell you, the very first one that I did, I forgot to put the barrel in until I had springs in there, and I had to take a couple of the springs off to get that back in there. So that's pro tip. All things in their right order. And you do have to recycle your arm for the emergency brake. So again, penetrating oil on the joints for that while you're working on this other stuff. That'll help it come apart. Right, I've got to put in the guide for the self-adjust cable. And that has two tabs on it. You're going to stick it in so that the cable will go around it, and you have to bend those tabs over for it to stay in, or it will not stay in place. And I found that if you bend one of them over a little bit as a hook first, it'll stay in while you pound the other side in. So that's the thing I'm talking about there, and I bent one corner and then the other corner is straight, and I need to tap those and bend those all the way over so that they'll stay in place. I just grab them with pliers and bend them a little bit to begin with. Oh, I can actually do the whole thing with pliers. That's even better. I was hitting it with the hammer with the first one, and that was not ideal. So now that's in there to stay. It doesn't even jiggle. That pin that comes in it is already in the brake shoes that I bought, so that's just garbage. I'm just chucking that. This is the cable that goes around that hook that we just put in and bent the tabs down on. And there is a right and a left side to these things, so you want to make sure that you match up exact parts with your old stuff, because it matters. This one actually has an R stamped on it. The other one had nothing stamped on it at all. And so I had to just compare and make sure that I grabbed the kit that was for the correct side, I should say. This is the actual right side. So there's a spring that holds that right there. And again, I'm looking at my old one to see exactly how this spring goes on here. It goes around the front of it. Maybe I can clip it on first and then put the spring around it. Oh yeah, that's the answer. Haha! Put the clippy thing on first. So that just goes over that and then slides in place, and that's what locks it in. And then I'm just going to grab the spring and put it up over the top with pliers. And I should have thought of that up first on the other side. I fought that thing for a while. Boom, just like that, it's done. That thing's on there just like it's supposed to be. I should have thought of that on the other side. Oh my gosh. I fought that for 10 minutes easy. I'd almost get it and then it'd slip off. I'd almost get it again and it'd slip off again. Crazy. Alright, so I'm going to get this thing in place. And then, oh actually, first things first. I got to get that pin out of this and keep this other mechanism there. So let's do that first. So these are the parts that you keep from the old one. Try to keep them in the right order so that you know exactly how they go back in. But I'm going to take a wire brush to them. But when I do that, I keep them in the same orientation. Alright, well the battery died in the middle of some part of that. But they try to tell you that you need these fancy plier things to work on these. You don't really with this old of a model. When I did my Dodge Ram, this little end of that thing came in super handy. I don't think I would have been able to do it without that. But these are just awkward to use. I prefer just using vice grips. So you just clamp your vice grips on good, and then stretch your springs over to where they need to go, and hook them in, just like that. Super easy. That's tight, both pads actually move. Emergency brake's gonna be solid, this is awesome. Everything's tight, one more spring to attach, and then I'll show you guys up close what we've done here. Oh, I had it, and it came off the edge. That's not good. Now it's not even where it belongs. Oh, I gotta get an extra hand for helping on this. Set up with the air tool and such. Been about 100 degrees. In fact, it got to 102 today. So we set up a shade tent so that we could keep working. We're underneath this tree now, so the shade tent's not doing as much. You're good. Good. Press and hold. Okay, same thing other side. Okay, pump. Press and hold. Pump. Press and hold. Okay, we're good.
Whoa.